This is Karen with newclevelandradio.net. It's time for Your Purpose, Your Power, a journey to authenticity. And what I love about this podcast, different from the other ones I've done in the past, I really push my guests to be as authentic as they can be without revealing, the family secrets. Although I tend to share my family secrets too often. My guest is Valerie, and I hope I say the last name right, Pedigo. And I think we lost connection. Okay. We lost connection there for a second, Valerie.
Yeah,
So
I
sorry
couldn't.
about that.
That's okay. I couldn't hear anything that you were
Okay,
saying.
well, that's okay. For those of you who heard the beginning, we'll just say it again, that my guest today is Valerie Pedigo, and we're going to talk about uh, a company that you, or a business that you started, Renewed Spirit Adventures.
Yes.
Now, I have to tell you, I've been down on a lot of coaches out there who have all these programs going on because sometimes I get like, how many programs can I go to? Which is the right one for me? And so, what I'm going to
Yes.
recommend to my guests today and those listening is do some research, find out who you connect with. Um, they're not all going to be for you, but what I've learned so far about Spirit Adventures, I think this is going to resonate with a lot of us. So, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Karen.
Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I totally agree with that. I believe everyone should have a coach, and we can talk about all the reasons why, but the most important thing is that connection. And so there are a lot of programs out there, and that's great. I honor all the work that everyone is doing to help each other. And it's important to have a connection, and it's important for us too as coaches. We'll just use that as kind of a broad lens, right? It's important that we have that connection as well. So
So, how did you?
yeah, renewed spirit adventures.
Yeah. How did you
Yeah.
start Spirit Adventures?
Well, I have been an entrepreneur for my whole life, but for 20 years I was a banker. I was an executive in the banking world. And our company, Renewed Spirit Adventures, is focused on helping women identify and heal through burnout to integrate into their life on the other side. And the reason why that's our purpose is because I myself went through clinical burnout. And so I, and we can talk about all the background, but how it started, this company started last year. It was based on my own experiences and the call and the need for a holistic approach to healing for the entire woman, not just certain pieces and parts, but a good proven system for integration, understanding how we get there in the background and our life experiences. We'll call them good and bad, right? I don't like to label them, but all of our life experiences kind of summit into who we are today. And what we found is, and what I found in my own experience, is that burnout is a result of being disconnected from who you truly are, for the purpose that you have on this earth, for the way that you move about your days, the way you move about your life, what lights you up. And so that disconnection starts to add layers and layers upon who you initially are. And that's all from pain, shame, conditioning, societal expectations, especially for us as women. And so anyone can burn out. It's just our focus right now is on women because we know this is the space that we're in, and we know that there's a huge need, especially for women between the ages of 35 and 65. And so, yeah, Renewed Spirit Adventures was born out of my own experience with clinical burnout.
And I think that's important for listeners to understand that many of us who are doing this work, we're doing it based on our life experience. And we don't necessarily say that our way is the only way, but it's an
Right.
experience. And I really encourage our listeners to think about what they can offer, because when you go through coaching or you go through um, a group atmosphere, we're all helping each other, whether you think you are or not. Um, I know when I went through burnout out of corporate America, I really blamed it on everybody else. It was the culture, it was certain expectations. And when I walked out the door for the last time, I really asked that huge question that we all ask. Okay, who am I now? I knew I was a
Who am
mother,
I
I knew I
now?
was a wife, I was a daughter, I was a friend, but I had spent 10 years cultivating myself in this culture, and it was no longer mine. And um, I went into a deep depression. Never thought that would ever happen to me, and it did. Um, and it took one doctor, my first appointment going in to see him, saying, "Tell me what you really feel." And when I said empty, he said, "How long have you been feeling that way?" And I thought for only a minute, and I said, "For a very long time." He said,
Very long.
"Then leaving corporate America is not why you're depressed." And all of a sudden, it was like I had all these options now, because
Yeah.
it wasn't what I thought. So now I could go redevelop myself. So 20 years in banking, which is a very um, rigid uh, workforce.
Mhm.
What was it like when you finally decided that, hey, I got to get out of here?
Yeah. Well, it was coming for a long time. So your story resonates with with me as well, and I'm sure with your listeners, and definitely with my sisters. That's what we call our clients, sisters and friends. It's not necessarily the job in particular, okay? But I wanna make sure I'm really clear. It's our life that leads up to it, and it's the layers and the adding and the adding. And typically it becomes very apparent in certain situations. Okay. And this is not about blame. This is not about the extremes, because I've experienced both, where it's like we're going to blame everyone else, like you said, everything about the environment. Or we also have women who only take responsibility for themselves, and somewhere in the middle. But what we can control, and I'm just going to use that word, what we have the power over is our own health and our own development and our own seeking of truth and who we are. So, what it felt like was I had been manifesting an opportunity to leave and be on my own for quite some time. But I was afraid, because every single part of my identity was wrapped around my career, my place in the community, myself as a mother, as a wife, like all the labels that we give ourselves. And it was all me, but it was also not me. And so I had so much invested in a beautiful career, successful. But I realized, and there was a couple of different moments throughout my time, if I don't make this change now to work towards freedom, which is my number one value, is the feeling of freedom that I can make my own choices and do my own things, be where I want with whom I want to be. If I don't do that now, I'm not going to be around much longer. And so I proceeded. Making the change from my corporate work was just one of the major life changes that I had to make to reclaim my life. And so how it felt was scary. There's a lot of unknown, especially when you start your own business. But my whole day changed. I went from doing 10 half hour meetings on different topics from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. And sometimes later, if we had a merger or we had other projects happening, my life went from that and just talking about the work part of my life to, okay, now I'm going to choose what direction I go and I'm going to follow what lights me up. And so it's exciting, but it's also, there's a lot of fear. Now, as I mentioned, I knew that I needed to make a change early on. So my timeline looks like, obviously it's way back to my childhood, but we'll just start with like the burnout part. So in 2020 with the pandemic, I had gotten a promotion, which allowed me to go from on the road and traveling all the time to working from home. And my children were at home. I have 4 children. They're all adults now. But and my husband, my ex-husband was a stay-at-home dad. And so like I went from on the road to all of us being together from home. And it was like, I'm killing this. I'm crushing it. I'm tackling projects. I'm getting promoted. And then in 2021, because in the banking industry, it was intense from a pandemic perspective because we had our colleagues working inside the banks and they didn't have time off. They had to be customer facing because it was that type of business. We can't close down banks. And then also I was running small business. And so the impacts of the pandemic on small business. So everything just started to weigh on me. And I was up all night, multiple times per week, just making sure, okay, can this business open tomorrow? And so it was an extreme amount of pressure. And I was also on the school board here in my local community. And in the school system, dealing with the pandemic for the first time, that was intense. And so I had gone from this high of starting to feel physical illness symptoms. And so if we fast forward a little bit, I just kept going, kept pushing through, saying, once this is over, once this project's done, once we complete this for the students, once we do this, once I do this for my family. And I just kept pushing myself. And I'll say self-care, but I'm not talking about self-care like it's been kind of commoditized now, but I truly was not thinking of myself at all. And so I was putting off medical appointments. I was putting off rest. I was only allowing myself to rest when I earned it, when I completed things. And so I ended up having a heart attack and I didn't even know it because I was carrying so much pain in my neck and my shoulders from being on the computer and from just carrying a lot. I didn't even notice it. I didn't find out until about a year and a half later that I had an infarction. Yes. And I was at a point where I wasn't able to walk. So I had been in a pretty bad car accident. I had injuries. I played high school and college basketball. And so I'd had injuries from that. And so I was at a point where I couldn't walk. And I was saying, oh, it's because my inflammation has flared up and it's my old injury. And so I'll take care of it later. And I was crawling on the floor from my office to my bedroom to get something, crawling on the floor because I couldn't walk. And someone from work called me and I answered the phone call instead of taking care of myself. And at that moment, I'm like, I'm going to die if I don't make a change. And so then I began to unravel. and it wasn't easy. It was hard as hell because I had to face a lot of things that I was not facing physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally. I wasn't feeling, like you said, that empty feeling. I was just kind of a hollow person going about my day doing the things. And so I started to unravel. I started to reach out to different places. I started to prioritize going to medical appointments and listening to podcasts, reading books, really digging and doing shadow work. And so it was kind of like when I left my corporate work, it was the keystone to say, I'm not all the way there yet, but I'm close enough and I'm going to make this change.
And
And
changes,
so I know that's a little bit, I like to give the background because, you know, we have an hour here. Nobody can tell their life story in an hour. But it's like, it wasn't just, I woke up one day and I was like, I can't take this anymore. And I quit, you know, it's like, it, it was a long process, but I will tell you for anyone who's going through that of our listeners, it took me 2 years, but now I have the rest of my life
you
to
know,
be me.
and that's why I like to do these podcasts, because there are so many of us who struggle. And like you said, those struggles come from way back in our life, but we don't
Way back.
necessarily think about, oh, that's because of X, or I remember how that affected me. Um, it was interesting when I started going for my certification in coaching. One of the questions that they asked us was to dig deep and find out and try to figure out when we had that need to share ourselves to help others. And I realized I was a young kid, very young. I used to tell people things about me and my family that my mother would come to me and say, "You told them what about us?" But I wanted people to understand why I did what I did. But then I found as I got older, I had to sort of hold that in. I had to do what everybody else expected of me. And I think most women, even the most independent women, will tell you there's a bit of that going on in their lives too. You know, what did their parents expect? What did their management expect? What are their children? Um, I know for me, and so I'm going to ask this directly. You have 4 kids, you had a husband. When you were going through this transition, were you afraid of losing that security of family? Because that was my biggest fear.
Yeah, I was afraid of a lot. As I started to unearth things, I started to realize that the marriage that I was in was probably not a forever thing, and that the type of support, once I started to understand what I needed, the relationship and the type of support that I needed wasn't something that could ever happen. And so there's a lot of things that happen as well. And, you know, I'm just going to share from my experience and my belief. Nobody goes into a marriage saying this is going to be temporary, right? Once I understood that it was okay, and once I understood that sometimes relationships are bridges to the next thing, that I can be grateful for the experiences that I had and for the person, but also understand that it was time for me to make a change, things got lighter. And there was a whole bunch, you know, I'm very open about the story. I'm very open about what I went through, and I've made sure that my family is okay with that as well, because not that I would change but I want to inform, because I think it's important. On the outside, everything looked perfect, right? But on the inside, it wasn't what I needed. And to be honest, because I wasn't receiving the support that I needed. And because of this position that I was in, there was no way that I could give to my partner what they needed. Right. And so in the end, now we're in a place where it's like we can move forward. Everything is amicable. But it, yeah, there was a lot of fear there because once you change, all your relationships change.
Exactly.
Because your relationships were based on the time and place and the person that you were at the time when they formed. And so one of the things that we do, so we have a community, it's called the Renewed Spirit Sisterhood, and we can talk a little bit more about it. There's a free sisterhood circle, so it's open to all women. And then there's options to deepen that experience through custom coaching and higher membership. But in that community, that's something that we talk about, and we focused on that in February because February is the month of love, right? And so we focused on how do we maintain connection without losing ourselves, and how do we evaluate some of the relationships that we have based on who we are now and the changes that we're going to make, and knowing that probably some of them are going to change.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
they have to change.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's been very interesting, the relationship dynamics, but for sure I was afraid because these are things that everybody wants to have the happy life, right? And so I want to have the most perfect relationship I can with my children. I want to have the perfect marriage and all that, but that's not how life goes. And especially when you're going through changes. And yeah, so what I did was I was able to dig in deep, understand, and stay focused on me. Stay focused on me, not just for myself, but for the people around me.
Exactly.
Because that's another thing too. It's like there's so much societal pressure on this martyrdom that we need to have as women, uh, spouses, mothers, caretakers, that we need to sacrifice ourselves and dissolve in order for the greater good. And the topic of motherhood always comes up, especially when I'm talking on podcasts and when I'm doing events. It's like, to me, the greatest gift that you can give to the people that you love, especially your children, is to be yourself and who you actually are. And so my relationships with my children have changed dramatically because I went from people pleasing, independent, strong, tough on the outside, right? But really what I was doing was trying to fill a role.
Right.
And
Exactly.
now I'm more free, more myself. So we have just a lighter and more fun relationship, still their mother. But now it's like they can see who I am. And sometimes they don't agree with the decisions that I make, and that's okay. Before I would be like, okay, well, if it's affecting them, I'm not going to do that thing that I want to do. Now it's like, I understand that it's affecting you. I'm still going to make the choices that I'm going to make. And what happens is it sets an example. And so, yeah, your original question was about fear, but I kind of definitely was afraid, like,
Like,
because I knew things had to change. And it's like that dread of,
yeah, exactly.
I'm going to have to leave my husband. I'm going to have to change my relationship dynamics. And not everyone has to make those huge changes. Sometimes it's, you know, your friends from who you were before. Maybe you need to tweak a little bit how much time you're spending with them. Everything is custom. It doesn't have to be so dramatic as the decisions that I made, but it can be. It can also be understanding what I need in relationships.
Absolutely. I know
And
when I went through mine, one of the first things that came to mind, I sat my husband down and I said, I love you, but I don't like you anymore. And he just sat there like, what did I do? And I said, no, you didn't do. It's me.
mhm,
Um, because I was the pleaser. And I said, I'm just so tired of coming home from work, and making dinner and making sure the laundry is done. And I just spilled it all out. And he goes, whoa, whoever asked you to do all that? And I said, well, you didn't have to ask. It was expected. He said, and what if you didn't do it? And that helped me quite a bit. It was
I
like,
love it.
wow, I was taking after my mother. My mother, worked my whole life. And she'd come home and she'd make dinner. She did the grocery shopping. She did the laundry. Yes, she taught us as we got older to help. But most of my childhood, she did it all. And so that's who I thought I had to be.
Uh-huh.
My husband grew up in a home where his father treated his mother like a queen. And he would come home even after she made a full dinner and he'd say, let's give that to the neighbors. I want to take you out to dinner tonight.
Mm.
And that's how my husband wanted to be with me. But I didn't know how to be that way. And
Yeah.
it took us a long time. And, we think we can't change. And that's what I hear from a lot of potential clients. I know I need to change my life, but I don't think I can. And my question is, well, first of all, what is it you think you need to change and why? Because maybe we think we have to because somebody told us to, or maybe it's just a temporary change. But you have, like you said, you have to dig deep. You've got to know what it is you're feeling. But you made another comment about when we get married, we don't say we're getting married for a temporary period of time. Except my husband said that. He said it right from the beginning. He said, we're going to get married. And if at any time we don't want to be married, then we're going to sit down and we'll change the contract. And I tell you, the first couple of years of our marriage, it scared me until I finally had the nerve to sit down and talk to him and say, what did that mean? He said, right now we're in love. We're together. I don't know how I'll be 5 years, 10 years, 20 years from now. So the day I went to him and said, I love you, but I don't like you, he said, we're going to change the contract. And the contract was, you don't have to do all this stuff. You got to be you. And I will tell you, the last 6 years of our life were the happiest for me. So it's okay to be afraid,
Right.
but make a choice. Make a choice. Do you want to stay being afraid? Or do you want to make a choice that maybe you can start to dissolve some of that fear? Now, how
The
do you
fear
do it in
comes.
Spirit Adventures?
How am I?
Yeah, how do you help your clients or the group?
Yeah, absolutely. And what a beautiful thing that you and your husband were able to cultivate, because the fear comes from scarcity,
Yes.
right? And the fear comes from a destabilization of self. And his point was, we want to choose each other,
Yep.
right? And so I love that. It's beautiful. It's making me emotional. So at Renewed Spirit Adventures, there's all different kinds of things that we do. I'm just going to go through a couple of the pillars. The first thing is I mentioned the Sisterhood community. So it's an online community, a place where we have groups of women gather. Every month we have a theme that we work on together, and that theme is just based on what I'm hearing from my clients, what I'm observing, my own experiences. And so we do one live workshop, and then there's all kinds of tools and resources throughout the month. In that group, you can go in and chat, ask each other questions, have conversations like, I'm facing this right now as anybody else. And so it's a safe space, it's a secure space for women. And so community to me is a huge part of recovery, is a huge part, no matter what stage you're in. If you're in the stage of, I think I'm heading towards burnout, and I don't want to. So I want to prepare myself to try to do now to avoid it. Or if you're right in the thick, in the middle of it, or if you have started to move out and now you're starting to say, who am I now? And everywhere in between. So this is why I say it's open to all women, because in some way we all feel societal, familial pressure to perform in certain ways. And so that community is really important. So community is a huge piece. We also do retreats and experiences. And so there comes a time where someone needs some time, protected time away. And sometimes it's a half day, sometimes it's a full day, sometimes it's a weekend, sometimes it's over a week, just depending on, what that person needs. But for example, March 14th coming up, and because I'm in Pittsburgh and our listeners are probably a lot from Cleveland, right? Within driving distance, we have a half day retreat called Who Am I Now? So when you said that, it just kind of like gave me the tingles, because it is about this liminal space, the transition. I'm no longer who I was, but I'm not yet sure who I'm going to be.
Right.
And so how do we live in that space? Embrace that space instead of rushing into decisions that may be other people's opinions, societal expectations. So we're going to live in that space all day, and then or for that moment, and it's going to be physical embodiment workshop. But it's really cool. I'll give you all the website information, but I'm doing that with my partner who owns movement studio, and she's also a licensed therapist. And then of course I do the identity work and the coaching and integration. And so those are the main pieces, the community, and then our retreats and experiences. And then there's the opportunity to work with me one-on-one or more intensive. And so throughout the year, I'll offer intensive coaching opportunities. And so that's another part of it is, just for example, it can look different for each person, but typically it's like a 3-month container where we meet really often. We do really solid, deep work, and then we work on integration. The difference, and again, I'm talking about my experiences, what I found in our space, in the coaching industry, in holistic health industry, wellness, is that there's a lot of amazing people doing amazing work. What ends up happening sometimes is there's no real life application. I experienced that. So I went on to a retreat. I had a beautiful experience. I did yoga every day. I ate organic food. I meditated. I got massages. When I got back home, well, what do I do now? And I noticed that. And so what we do is we have an integration process. How do we take the transformation and the work that we're doing and apply it to real life? Because real life exists, right? Some of us, some people can say, all right, I can take this time, but most of us, I would say 99% of us, we have families, jobs, other expectations, friends, relationships, community, all that. So we've got to be able to work our work, our healing work within the day-to-day. And so that's my specialty, is getting to the root cause from way back of why we are where we are right now, and then putting it into day-to-day life. So that's just a little bit about what we do and kind of how it works.
Well, and I love the fact that you are talking about integrating it into our lives, because let's take something as simple as exercise. My cardiologist a number of years ago said to me, I need you to do cardio at least 3 times a week for 20 to 30 minutes. And I looked at him and I said, really? And he goes, you don't have 20 to 30 minutes? I said, I guess. And I walked out of his office really frustrated, because in my head, I didn't have 20 to 30 minutes. I had everything set up. And about a week after that appointment, I realized that every night I was watching Wheel of Fortune and Jeopardy. And I thought, well, I have a stationary bike in the bedroom. What if I sat on that bike and rode the bike and watched my TV programs?
Mm-hmm.
And that has become a routine. I do that every night.
Yeah.
I miss it. I'm out of town this week. And I said to my son, I have to figure out something else to do this week. And he goes, Mom, you are allowed to rest. And it's like, you are right. But it is so much a part of me. And
Yeah.
I enjoy it. That's my time. But sadly, we think we don't have the time to do these things. My son takes at least a half hour every night and listens to music. He loves to play his games after work. He likes to do so many other things. But he knows music calms him down.
Mm-hmm.
And every night, no matter what. So he had been visiting me this weekend before I came to Columbus, and he would just say to me, I have something to do for a half hour. Knew exactly what it was. When his half hour was over, if I was available, he'd come back. If not, he was on his own. Last night, here I am in his apartment, and he left the room, and I heard some music in the other room. I turned off the TV so I could listen to it too. And it was very calming. And then I realized I have a half hour a day that I can listen to music. It's not going to disrupt my business. It's not going to disrupt anything else.
Yes.
But we have to learn how to do that. And
Yes.
when you go to a retreat, oftentimes there are the suggestions. Oh, you're going to go home and do yoga. You're going to eat better. And then you go home and it's like, well, to eat better, it's going to cost me a little bit more. I don't want to spend the extra money. Or I don't
Mm-hmm.
remember how to do the yoga. So I give it up before I even start.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And so so many amazing things just in the example. Yeah, with your son and with the biking. So you enjoy riding your bike and watching Wheel of Fortune and Jeopardy. What happens is, especially when we're in burnout, we start routines like this and then we lose interest in it, but we keep doing it anyways because we committed to doing it. And so now it goes from joy to obligation. And so that's an important thing to mention. And then what you and your son have created is a system of support. Because a lot of times I get asked, what can I do if I have a loved one that is in burnout or starting to mention, I'm starting to see the signs, they're starting to see the signs, what can I do? And you are not the doctor. It is not your responsibility to heal someone else. It is not your responsibility to make sure someone else is okay. What you can do is truly check in and then allow space. It would be really easy in that dynamic with mother and son to say, him feeling like, I'm not going to do my 30 minutes of music because mom's here and I need to entertain her, right? In so many words. And you could be like, I don't want that. I want you to do what you're doing. But your presence there is creating something unspoken, right? And so you created a support system by saying, I have something to do for 30 minutes. And you say, okay. And you do your thing for 30 minutes. And then you come back together if you can. And if you can't, then you do your own thing. But I know I would always feel so much pressure when someone was in my home, for example, or if I was in someone else's home, I would just totally abandon the things that I wanted to do because I wanted to. And so just it sounds like the way you say it is so light, but it's a really beautiful thing that you've done with your son together, because he has his 30 minutes and you have the things that you want to do and the choices that you have. And so um, there's that. And then also, it's easy to say we have 30 minutes, but when Karen, like when you're so high, like when everything is intense, everything's anxious, I truly believed that I did not have 10 minutes. I did not have 10, because if I spent that 10 minutes stretching, going for a walk, that's 10 minutes I could have talked to one of my colleagues. I could have spent some time with my cats. I could have had a quick conversation with my child. And so we start to, it's real, because it's our life, right? But then we step back and say, if I spent that 10 minutes right now going for a quick walk, when I come back, I'm going to be better.
Exactly.
For myself, for my work, for my relationships. And so, yeah, it's a really great thing that you brought up on a lot of different levels. But it is it's like our brain, the brain here messes with us,
Oh,
right? And that's one of the things that we teach. And I can go on for a long time of the psychology of it. But basically, the human brain is meant to keep you safe. And so safety to the brain is the known. And so we will continue to enter into situations that cause us pain because it's known. Because for the brain, the unknown is scarier. And so the brain convinces us to behave in certain ways, to make certain decisions in a form of protection. But really what it's doing a lot of times when it's not for survival
yep,
is it's messing with us.
yep, exactly.
And so the brain makes us to believe you don't have 10 minutes, girl. You got to do something in that 10 minutes. You can walk some other day. You can walk when you're retired, right?
You can do a
It's
lot of
just,
different things. Yeah.
yeah, it's just so that's why I encourage also our sisters to call it the brain and not my brain, because it really exists on its own. And our body is what we need to be listening to, because our body knows before the brain knows, before anything else happens. But we put it in a box. We ignore the signs and signals, and we say, no, I can just push through. And the body's like, at some point, what my body said to me is, we're done with you.
Right.
It's enough. So now you think you can do all of this and you can run through everything and ignore yourself? We're going to shut you down because we need you to rest.
So what I love is that you have this community. And this past month, as I've shared with many of my listeners, my husband passed away. And yeah, I had friends who were there for me and family who were there for me. But a lot just didn't understand what I was really going through. And I accepted that. But I found this group online. And I will tell you, finding a community that you can share with, that you can feel safe with, is remarkable. I've never been a community person. I've always been this one-on-one type support person. And I'm going to join your community because I believe in so much of what you're doing, but I believe in the women who have had the experiences that will help me understand more of myself along the way. And if you're listening to this, I don't care what your age is. I know there are so many women out there who say, I'm too old to make a change. You're never too. If you're breathing and living, you can make a change, but you have to want to. You can't go to Valerie and say, I want to be 50 pounds lighter, and that's not her area of expertise, but her area of expertise is support. If you want to become 50 pounds lighter, what are you going to do for yourself?
Mm-hmm.
I want to eat healthier. Well, yeah, you can give them some suggestions of healthier eating, but you're not going to be grocery shopping and cooking for them. So
Right.
all we can do is guide them, but you have to be able to want to do it. Um,
Mm-hmm.
when we came to Columbus yesterday, my son and I went grocery shopping um, because as a young bachelor, he doesn't keep much in his house. I said, okay, let's get some food. And um, it was unbelievable how much natural and organic food he prefers. And I was surprised because when he used to live at home, there were McDonald wrappers all over the house. So, when did this all change? And he said, I don't want to die from a heart attack. And so I'm trying to do the best I can. And part of the reason he doesn't keep a lot of food in the house is he works long hours. And so when he comes home, he stops at the store, he buys what he needs fresh, he comes home, he cooks it. Um, but he decided on his own that he wanted to make the change. But he found a community online that encourages him. And that to me is spectacular.
Yes. Yes.
So how can we
I
follow you?
say, yeah. Yeah, I was just going to mention, like, even if you're not sure if you're ready to change, like the curiosity is the most important part. And so if you think, I think maybe there's something there, then take the step. Yeah. So our website is renewedspiritadventures.com, and you have show notes,
There will be
Karen,
for
like,
that. Yes, yes.
okay,
Yep.
perfect. So we'll make sure that that's in there, but renewedspiritadventures.com. And from the website, you can see the story that has the portal to join the sisterhood. And so the Sisterhood Circle is free for all women. And then there's an opportunity to deepen. We have an enlightened membership, which is less than $100 a month, and it includes smaller groups, um, time with me every quarter. And so it's a higher touch, especially if you're ready to move to the next level. There you'll also see the current experiences and retreats that we have available, and we have a whole bunch more. So make sure that you're bookmarking the website. But that's where I would start, renewedspiritadventures.com. Also make sure that you follow us on social media. So we are on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. We share ways, we share stories, we share ways to help move through burnout, how to identify it. So it's all different kinds of topics. A lot of it is educational, but you'll also see more of my story and some of my life, and the lives of our community members. Um, so that's a great way to join along too. But today, if something here has resonated, go online, join the sisterhood. It's really easy to do. It's a safe community, so it's not necessary. It's not like a Facebook community that's open. You have a password, a username, and a password, and so
Yes.
everything is secure. But that's where I would start. And then there's also on the website, connect with us, fill out that form, and let's meet one-on-one. You'll have access to my calendar, and we can have some time to talk through what is your next step, and to understand a little bit more, or just to have a conversation if you need someone to talk to.
I love it. I love it. Well, I thank you for joining me today. And I'm so glad to know that you are close by. So I'm going to have to watch for those retreats. Um,
Yes.
I hate highway driving, but I can take the
Well,
turnpike.
I do a lot. I do a lot in Northeast Ohio as well.
Okay.
So I've been doing retreats in near Canton
Okay.
for like multiple times last year. So I partner with the yoga studios. And so that's a quick trip for anybody who's in the
Absolutely.
Cleveland, the greater area.
Absolutely. Well, we will be in touch, and we will have all
Thank
that
you.
information in the show notes. Thank you, Valerie.
So thank you,
Have
Karen.
a great
Bye
day.
bye.
Bye now.